So I'm going over the biggest scams in history, not just in modern times, in history. I saw this podcast or article or something. A girl was writing about the 11 biggest scams, and she was talking about Milli Vanilli scamming you into thinking they were singing and, you know, just some pretty low level scams. And when you look around you, you're being scammed every single day. Every single day, 24 hours a day. And one of these scams, one of these biggest scams is, um, let me show you here. The idea that you're free. This is one of the biggest scams in the world because America is supposedly a free country. You're supposedly free. And there are people coming here from Honduras, from Guatemala, Nicaragua, Russia, China, on the basis that this country is free, that we live in a free country. In our national anthem, land of the free. And nothing could be further from the truth. You are not free. You don't live in a free country. Here's a woman who is engaged in some activity. She's a surrogate for a couple in China. She's a surrogate mother. So she got paid to have a kid, and they haven't been able to get the kid, the Chinese people, because they haven't been able to come over since COVID. So she makes a comment, in the US, we're very free to speak our mind and do what we want. And in China, that's not the case. If they're told do something, they do it. So this lady right here has 100% an idea in her mind. She's free. In the US, we're very free to speak our mind. Well, by the way, lady, no, you're not. You can't speak your mind in America. You can't. If you say something, okay, uh, there are laws on the books. There are laws governing speech. Your speech could be considered a threat. Your speech could be considered disorderly conduct. And then if there's no criminal law against your speech, there's civil law. Your speech could be considered disparaging, could be threatening, could be demeaning, could be defamatory. So you're not free to speak your mind in this country, and that's just a small portion of all of the lack of freedom or freedoms that you have. Speech is one of the ones that is kind of open. You can, say certain things here that you may not be able to say in China, but to say that you are free, very free to speak your mind is not a true statement. Now, in China, she says if you're told to do something, they do it. Well, guess what? In America, if you're told to do something, you better do it because you're not free. You're not free. You think you're free, you're not free. For instance, wearing a mask. How many times have people been in fights How many times have people been thrown out? How many times have people been told to get off a plane? How many times have people been controlled to wear a mask? They're told you have to wear a mask. And it's not even a law. There's no law on the book that says you have to wear a mask. This is governors, this is health officials. These are, the CDC. These are people that aren't even policemen, aren't even cops. It's not even a law that you have to wear a mask. It's a quote unquote mandate. It's an order. It's a governor's order. And guess what? You have to do it. Now, how are you free? You're not free. In the state of Florida, in terms of masks, the governor there was more lenient and said, you guys can do this if you want to. If you don't want to, it's fine. Just be careful, this and that. But in California, they said, no, you have to wear a mask. And who's they? The people in control, the people who are controlling your freedom, people who are telling you what to do on a daily basis. It can be a health official, it can be a governor, it can be a city council, it can be a cop, it can be anybody who's a quote unquote official. Okay. So you think you're free? You think you're in the land of the free? First and foremost, if you have a government, if you're governed, if you are governed, how are you free? If you have a government over you, or you have an official, a government official over you telling you what to do, how are you free? Freedom is acting without restraints. Freedom is acting without boundaries. Freedom is no restriction. So just the fact that you have a government over the top of you, you're not free. You're not even close to free. Now, you'll often hear these officials tell you, well, we live by the rule of law. Well, law can be federal law can be state law can be county law, and it can be city laws. And not only that, but in the modern day, we have something called code. It's not law. It hasn't been ratified by a Senate or put through a process of state government or federal government. It's a city government code that you have to live by. So how are you free? How are you free? So you've got city code, you've got county code, you've got county regulations, you've got city regulations, you've got state law, you've got federal law. There are so many laws and so many codes on the books that almost everyone who exists is in violation of at least one of those codes, one of those ordinances, one of those laws at any time. How are you free? You are governed. You are governed by a city government, a county government, a state government, a federal government. You are governed by health officials, by county school board officials, by city council members, by mayors, by lieutenant governors, by cops. How are you free? It's literally like saying, "Hey man, you're in a prison and you're completely free. You can do whatever you want in prison. You're in a prison, but you can go wherever you want to. You're free to do what you want in your own cell." There's a guy in Russia that got sent to a penal colony number 2. prison, okay, in Russia. And he says, order is maintained in the prison by both prison guards and prisoners known as orderlies who cooperate with the prison administration. So order is maintained by the prison guards and by prisoners. So the very people who are being imprisoned are helping to imprison you. And that is part of your freedom or lack of freedom in the modern day. You have orderlies all over the place calling the cops. So here's an orderly, here's a guy who calls the cops. So if you don't do what this guy thinks you should be doing, he calls the authorities on you. How are you free? How are you free? You're surrounded by people. Not only are you surrounded by county administration, city officials, health officials, et cetera, cops to enforce what those officials say. You're surrounded by people, actual people who will call the cops on you at any moment. This girl got called, the neighbor called the cop on her for dressing in an inappropriate outfit. How is she free? She's supposedly on her own porch, wearing her own clothes, with her own video camera, on her own account, on TikTok, making a video, and a neighbor calls the cops on her. How is she free? Which gets me to another point of, you think you own your property? You don't own your own property. You're not free to do what you want on your own property. Try to dig for gold on your own property. Try to dig for salt on your own property. Try to dig for any precious metal on your own property. Just try to dig a well on your own property. See what happens. Try to keep a car on your own property that the city officials don't want there. And you'll see what happens. Try to keep a horse on your property. Just try to have a horse out there. See what happens. Try to keep your dog without a tag on it. See what happens. You think you're free? Try to put up a flagpole. Just try to put up a flagpole on your property. You think you're free? Try to build a shed. You think you're free? Add an addition to your house. You think you're free? You're not free. Every single action you take is regulated, is governed, and controlled. And if it's not controlled or governed now, it will be in the future. If they haven't got a code or anything, a law or an ordinance or something to cover what you did and you get away with it, they'll make one. So if you put up a flagpole and they don't have an ordinance that says you can't put up a flagpole, they'll make one. Meaning they being the officials, the people who are controlling you. And I'm going to get into in another video the scam of ownership, because you don't own anything. You think you own something, you don't own anything. You think you're free in this country, you're not free. You're not free. You have no freedom. So you're being controlled every single second of every single day by a government, by people who are calling themselves a government, by people who are calling themselves your mayor, by people who are calling themselves your city council. Think about how many people thought they were free to, have their own business. You can't just have your own business. You have to have permission to have your own business. You can't dig a hole in the ground. You have to have permission. You just can't stand on some in a park. You have to have the city's permission, meaning that if it's past a certain hour, if that park closes at sunset and you're standing there, you don't have their permission to be there. You might have their permission from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., but if you don't have their permission, you can't stand there. You're not free. You're not free. You're the farthest thing from free that there is, minus, China and Korea. There's a couple places where you're not quite as free, quote unquote, free. So in this country, the land of the free, the home of the brave, if you're buying into the idea that you're free, you're being scammed. You're being scammed 100% of the way because you are not free. No American is free.